Apparently, we've reached that. Everybody here, I will call to order the Thursday, May 15th, 2025 Budget Committee meeting for Clackamas Fire District. The meeting is called to order per ORS 192.610 to ORS 192.690. As per ORS 192.650, the meeting is being recorded. Shelby, could you call the roll for everyone here, please?
Yes, we'll start with our citizen members. William.
Here.
Aaron.
I'm here.
Tim.
Here.
Julie. Here. Lindsay. Here. Thomas.
Yes.
Jim.
Here.
Chris.
Here.
And Marilyn. Here.
Great. I jumped ahead of myself. If everyone join, stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I didn't have Shelby's script already, so. I get the first thing, introductions. I'm Chris Oz. I'm board chair, current board president of Clackamas Fire District. I'd like to welcome you all. Thank you for doing this. It's a very important part of the budget process that we have citizen members here to look and see that the point of the budget process in Oregon law is to basically outline the budget, present it to the budget committee, and as citizen members, then you can look at it as are we accurately and transparently explaining how we're going to expend the funds according to policies and goals the board has set? So with that, I guess I will turn to our chief. Did you want to?
I think you started out perfectly. We can
Okay.
turn it over to Mark. You're good.
So typically, we would elect a budget committee chairperson.
Our tradition is that we have one of the citizen members chair the meeting of the budget committee. So if someone would like to nominate someone.
I'd nominate Tim Powell,
Yeah, I think we need to do that. Johnny.
but at least he's consistent.
Yeah.
Any other nominations?
Second.
All right, then all those in favor of throwing Tim Powell into the budget committee chairperson bus? Aye.
There you go.
I.
I'll tell you, every year at sunrise, there's a contest at this point to see if I can actually get the entire sentence opening nominations before somebody throws me under the bus. And I have 6 members who have a good contest going. The record is no, I can't get the sentence. Meeting is yours. You want the gavel?
No, thanks. I would just throw it at William. All right, well, moving on, looks like, we're going to have the budget message from, our chief. Did you have a message you wanted to say?
Well, we have to have a secretary?
Do we have?
Oh,
We don't need to.
Sorry, we got it.
We don't.
No, Shelby will record the votes, and we're recording the meeting, and we'll provide minutes after, so,
Okay.
we're good.
Okay.
As long as we have.
Excuse me, I thought officially you had to name somebody as secretary, even if they didn't do anything.
My understanding of the budget law is it only requires a committee chairperson.
Okay,
I think I had that spot
Yeah.
last year that I
was it
didn't.
onerous?
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, you can certainly nominate someone, they will have nothing to do, and that's fine, but
well,
when we read the budget law, there was only a chairperson required.
Thank you.
all right, well, following the script here, it looks like the budget message and overview.
Okay, thank you all for coming again and serving on the committee. It is my privilege and job to deliver the budget message. I'll largely follow kind of the outline that's already in the budget document, looking mainly at sections 2 and sections 4, which provide the the broad overview of the budget and then touching on the capital plan as well. I'll try to be quick and brief, hit the highlights. Feel free to ask questions, and of course, we'll have time for additional discussion and questions after I'm done with the messages as well. Everybody should have the presentation in front of them, and we'll have it on the screen here. Everyone,
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
So just a reminder, and Director Hawes already went over a little bit, just the budget committee's role is to provide input, ask questions, and potentially propose changes to the budget, mainly the appropriation levels or the tax rates. We will have voting items at the end. We need approval of the actual budget itself. We need approval of the two tax rates, one for our property tax rate and one for our optimal levy rate. And then an approval of the levy amount to repay our general obligation debt service, geo bond debt service. So those will be the voting items at the end of tonight. Assuming we can all get there. So just to recap where we are in the current budget year, and you know the focus of the district both last year and this year, a lot of it has been on implementing the levy that the voters approved in 2023. So the current year is our second year of levy funding. We hosted 2 new firefighter academies this year, bringing on 30 new firefighters through those. We opened Station 13 with a 3-person crew last July 1st. And then added a 2-person quick response unit at Station 1 on January 1st. And then the next piece of the levy is the scheduled opening of Station 12 this July 1st. So those the personnel that we need to operate that are currently in the district's new recruit academy, and that should open on July 1st. After some renovations are done there this month. Other highlights, we did add 3 support positions throughout the fiscal year to keep pace with the growth of the organization. Those are 40-hour spots, and the budget included and the transfer will be done of $4.3 million to the capital replacement fund, which hopefully you'll recall that was part of the levy plan, is that in the first few years of the levy, because we could not spend all of those funds on personnel because of the time it takes to recruit, hire, and put them through academies, that we would have one-time funds to put into the capital fund to make some headway on some of the capital that we needed to purchase and work on. We do have 2 ongoing grants right now. We received a pass-through grant from Clackamas County to operate a community paramedic program. So we have 3 limited term FTE that are working in that program out of our community paramedic office. And we also have assistant firefighters grant for structural collapse trainings. We'll be sending a group to Texas, I believe, shortly to do the first training for that, with another group scheduled to go in July. Those are the big grants we have right now. And then, you know, where we're at fiscally on the year, I would think we're gonna end the year maybe with a slight surplus, with largely a balanced budget. We did have some one-time revenue gains from a very busy wildfire season, both here in Oregon, and then we sent multiple crews down for a full 2-week deployment to the LA fires. So that revenue is one-time revenue that is helping, but we have had some higher than expected expenses, largely in overtime and operational replacement. So that will those 2 will largely balance out. The other difference that you'll see in the budget this year compared to last year, for those of you that are returning, is that we did do a supplemental budget, I think back in October or so, to create a health benefits fund. And the purpose of that was we have always budgeted our health benefits in the general fund. And technically, under state law, as a self-insured health insurance plan, we're supposed to segregate those funds into a separate fund. So we made that move this year. It does have some budgetary benefits in that by setting up a reserve fund, we don't necessarily always have to budget for the worst case scenario, because we can always dip into those reserves in in high claims years and then build those reserves back up in low claims years. So it did free up some general fund that we always had kind of budgeted for that worst case scenario and health claims costs. So, so that is now in the budget because of the supplemental that we did. Yeah, Wayne.
Right, excuse me, on back to the wildfire deployments, our reimbursement on that, as I recall, doesn't happen immediately, is that right? Does it happen actually in the next budget year?
It depends on which agency we're working for. So we have all the deployments that we did last summer and in the fall for the Oregon State Fire Marshal's Office. We've been reimbursed for those. The California wildfires, we've submitted our reimbursement request, but they haven't sent the funds yet. Similarly, we sent us a group to the hurricane, I think in North Carolina, and we're still waiting reimbursement on that. But what we'll do is our partners are usually pretty good about reimbursing us. So since we know the exact amount that we're requesting a reimbursement, we will accrue those funds to the current fiscal year and treat them as revenues in 24-25.
Thank you.
So, overview of the 25-26 proposed budget. So in building the budget, I will say it was a more challenging economic environment than we've had in the last couple of years. That's both due to some internal factors as well as just the external factors of the overall economy. And some of that challenging environment is also leading to some uncertainty that we have in the budget. The biggest uncertainty is probably our current labor negotiations. So as it mentions in the budget, as probably everybody knows, our largest labor union, Local 1159 Firefighter Group, their contract expired last June 30th, and we are still in negotiations with arbitration scheduled later this month. So there is, and that's the uncertainty is which last best offer we would expect the arbitrator to award to. And as it says in the budget, we're assuming for the budget that the district's last best offer is awarded, and we would expect expenses to potentially be higher if that was not the case. There also is some uncertainty around our revenues. I mean, there's always some uncertainty around our revenues, particularly we don't know for sure what our property tax is going to be until we get the assessor's report in October. But on top of that, there was some uncertainty just until last week about how much money we'd be getting back from Oregon City Urban Renewal. And then we've recently learned that will likely be losing a significant amount of our ambulance transport revenue as AMR may be modifying their plans and how many folks we can transport. So we have some potential revenue losses coming in 25-26, all of which have really come to light just in the last week since that's been published. So the Oregon City Urban Renewal, they elected to forego 75% of their tax increment. And so that is about an extra $450,000 in one-time revenue that's not reflected in the proposed budget that will be coming to the district this year. Per our practice, we should treat that as one-time revenue, not ongoing revenue, because at any future year, Oregon City can basically reclaim that tax increment.
Excuse me, that was for 25% that they will collect for each of the years of the biennium.
Right.
Whereas last year was 25-75, I think.
Right, so so for each.
Yeah.
No, in the last biennium, they did 0 and 25.
That's right.
Right, and then this biennium, they're doing 25 and 25.
Yeah.
So we do know that for the next 2 years, we'll be receiving 75% of the tax increment from Oregon City that would have otherwise gone to their road.
And one other question regarding the arbitration.
Mhm.
Does the arbitrator have to choose between one last best offer?
Yes,
Or are they able to compromise?
no,
Okay, good
it's
to
either
know.
or.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, Oregon, I believe Oregon's pretty unique in that, but that's the law, yeah. So given that uncertainty and also given the challenging economic environment, which we'll get into, we did have a budget deficit when we initially set out, where in order to fund our current positions and some of the additional levy positions, we were going to be in a deficit, and we're committed to a structurally balanced budget. So we did make some reductions, and in making those reductions, the key principles are outlined there, which we wanted to make sure we were continuing our core functions. maintaining our levy commitment and preserving our capital funding, so. All right. So next piece, why is it a challenging economic environment? One of those pieces is our expenses have been outpacing our revenue. And you can see in the chart there, our ongoing property tax growth, which again is roughly 85 to 86% of our total revenue, has been growing from around 3.5%, projected to grow only 3% this year. Meanwhile, our personnel expenses have been exceeding that for the last few years and would exceed it again in 25, 26, based on the last best offer that we have put forward to the arbitrator. We've also seen some pretty big growth in some of our materials and services expenses. I put some of the biggest examples there. But CCOM, which is the county's dispatch agency, those fees have increased. The biggest one has been our SAFE, which provides our workers' compensation insurance. And part of that is due to us having some particularly high claims. Part of that is just an industry trend where workers' compensation rates have been going up in the fire industry and throughout.
What's our experience rating?
It is 0.98. So that has gone up quite a bit for us in the last few years. But we should have a firm quote for next fiscal year later this month. The other reason for the challenging economic environment, again, is our deteriorating revenue forecast, our property tax forecast. We received notice from the county assessor's office to expect AV growth between 2.75% and 3.25% this year. So we've assumed the middle of that figure at 3%. And that would be kind of a continuing of a trend, although 3% is pretty low of sub 4% for a number of years. Which makes it pretty hard to grow and stay ahead. And you can see on the next slide, which again comes from page 29 of the budget, one of the reasons I'm pretty pessimistic about our property tax growth, and that is that there's just not a lot of development and building going on. So 2024 permits for residential construction were at their lowest levels since the Great Recession. The first 3 months of 2025 haven't made it look any better. And so, right now we're just starting to see that downturn show up in our property tax receipts. There's gonna be a lag here, right? Where the projects that are permitted and planned for now, we're still benefiting from some of these projects that were permitted and planned for in 2021, 22 and are finishing and things like that. And now we're gonna start to see that downturn a little more. So.
Mark, I just had a quick question on this one.
Mhm.
23 and 24 and 24 and 25 show a subnote 3.
Oh, I guess that,
There is no subnote 3.
it got cut off. I apologize. So subnote 3 there, I hope it didn't get cut off in the budget, but, subnote 3 refers to the one-time diversion of funds from Oregon's city urban renewal. So it makes the reporting of property tax revenue in those years a little wonky, because they're giving us some of their tax increment and then they're taking it back. And so, so 23, 24 looks like a high growth year because it says our property tax grew 4.52%. But about 0.8% of that growth is because Oregon City Urban Renewal decided not to collect on 100% of their tax increment, right?
Right.
But if you take away that one-time effect of them being like, we're not gonna collect urban renewal money that year, our AV only grew about 3.6%, right? Similarly, 24, 25 looks like a pretty low year at 3.34%, and it's not actually that low. Our actual ongoing growth was a little higher than that, but it was depressed because in that year, Oregon City decided to take back 25%. So, I'm trying to be as clear as I can with the numbers, and it just gets a little wonky when you're trying to separate out what's ongoing revenue versus these kind of one-time effects of.
As depressing as it might be, have we ever sat down and figured out how much money we've lost to urban renewal over the years?
I have not gone back and calculated a historical figure, right? There is a table in the budget somewhere. page 33 that shows that in 24-25 we lost an estimated $2.7 million for the renewal. Yeah. But I haven't gone back historically to add that up for every year. Looks like you have a question, Lindsay.
Yeah, so since after you did this, you found out that we're gonna get the 25%, is the 3% then isn't including that?
The 3%.
Cause it doesn't, I mean, obviously, the
Right.
703 with.
Right, so yeah, so
on it.
no, so I took the subnote 3 off because I did update this figure in the handout. That the 3% includes Oregon City giving back 75% of the tax increment, right? Because if you look at the figure that was actually in the budget document, it was actually only a 2.1% growth. Because
Okay, so
the proposed budget originally assumed they were gonna take back all 100%, and so that was gonna depress our growth.
No,
Now we're back to, we think AV is gonna grow by 3%. And because Oregon City's forgoing that, it will actually grow at 3%, if that makes sense.
yes,
Okay. I don't know why that trips me up a little bit.
Did anybody happen to watch the county commission today?
Mm.
Where they voted to accept that proposal for all the housing units where the old courthouse used to be. So that could greatly increase the property taxes available, which could make more money for us here.
Yep.
And that sounds like they're on a fast track to get that done too. But first they gotta get rid of that old place.
Yeah, any development is good from our revenue
Yeah,
perspective.
the actual development, just a lot of those, you know. When you get right down to a lot of urban renewal projects that are basically like a street beautification project. If and when we ever do get back the AV from that, it's gonna be the same as it would if you hadn't beautified the buildings, because it's gonna go up 3% a year. So ultimately, I mean, in an area like Happy Valley, when we get that back from an urban area that's being renewed that doesn't exist. That will see an increase, but a lot of these other areas, we're not really gonna see any added value. We're just gonna get back to where we would have been if it had done the 3% every year, minus we haven't had the money all these years. And it hurts. And we're popping out fire engines at 1.1 million a day. Anyway, that's my urban renewal rant. I'd just say that California got rid of tax increment finding in 2012 and. Far be it for California to be heading progressive tax policy that makes sense. Okay, I'm done.
You're good. So that's the concern for property tax is, you know, a low growth rate this year. But I think looking at the housing permits, the larger concern is what does it look like in 26, 27, 27, 28? Is 3% the bottom? Is it gonna be hovering around 3% for a few years, or are we gonna start to see it recover and build back up? And that's what we're, you know, you worry about when you look at some of our forecasting.
We don't have meters being purchased. They buy the meters generally before they'll go for permits because they gotta be STCs and stuff, and we're still seeing they're not buying meters. Our pre-solds are way down, so it'll be a while.
That's good information. Not the best information, but good information.
The other challenge are our PERS rates. And you know, I was expecting a rather large jump in 2025. Our advisory rate, what PERS said we should expect in 2025 was 26.7%. And instead it went up to 27.8%. So about a 1 percentage point increase more than we were planning for. And there are a few reasons for that. And it happened to a lot of agencies. The biggest reason is folks, agencies that have side accounts, they weren't earning, or they were being depleted faster than PERS had expected. The other piece in particular for fire agencies was a change in the PERS rules for OPSRF members that allows them to retire earlier, that increased some of our actuarial liability. But just to put in perspective, like what does this increase in PERS mean? So if we didn't provide any COLAs, right, and just paid our employees exactly the same in 25, 26, what they're getting now, just the PERS rate increase alone is a $1.3 million increase in our costs. And so that eats up roughly half of the new property tax revenue that we're gonna get just from this PERS increase. So that was, again, like I said, a portion of that was expected and planned for, but that extra percentage point, that's, 450,000 that wasn't.
Geezers are just not dying fast enough.
Or the funds are not earning the rate of return that they're supposed to, and so on and so forth, so. So with that, we were looking at to continue with our levy plan and to continue operations the way we were going to, basically kind of a status quo deployment at a budget deficit in 25-26 of about $2 million. And so we made targeted cuts to some materials and services programs. I instructed all of our programs and all of our departments that they would not be getting a cost of living increase for any of their materials and services budgets, so those were essentially kept flat, and folks were asked to make do. We decided to delay our recruit academy that was planned for the fall to the spring of 2026, which creates some one-time savings and also gives us some time to hopefully some of the uncertainty that we're facing both with bargaining and our property tax growth, we'll have better answers on that before we embark on the spring academy and what size it should be and things like that. So that's not just the budget savings, but it allows us some time to figure out where things stand.
Wouldn't you have had some extra expenses based on the remodel going on, trying to put on an academy and have job shacks and all that extra stuff?
Yeah, so we were gonna need to rent a job shack for the academy to use while we were remodeling the warehouse, and so that is able to come off of that project cost, which, it wasn't super expensive in the whole scheme of the project, but does result in savings. Yeah, and it just makes the operations of the next academy a lot easier, not to have them navigating around a construction project out there. But yeah, but that wasn't the reason for us delaying, but it is a good side benefit that we won't be doing an academy at the same time, and we can talk about those projects tools. When we get to the capital.
When do you expect the arbitration to be complete?
The hearing is May 28th and 29th. And I would expect, hopefully by mid to late summer, the arbitrator provides their decision. So, usually there's the hearing, and then they give the parties 2 to 3 weeks to submit their final briefs. And then once those are in, then they have 30 additional days to make their decision. So that could push it to the end of July or August maybe.
Thank you.
And then the other large piece and the bulk of the savings that we've identified is operations, emergency operations will be implementing a plan to not backfill certain frontline firefighter positions when they are vacant due to leave, right? Sick leave, vacation leave, paid leave Oregon, what have you. And that will lower firefighter overtime and produce some savings for the budget. And you'll see that when we get to the slide on operational purpose. And as I think I highlighted in the budget, I mean, that is in a way, that is a service reduction, right? There will be certain days where we have less firefighters on duty than necessarily we do today, if we're not backfilling certain vacant spots. Yeah.
Just as a person that voted for the levy. And I reread the levy again, because you have the statement that says, our goals are to balance the budget and to meet our levy commitments.
Mhm.
We upstaffed several of our stations, right, to 4, we opened new stations, so by not backfilling stations. To me, it's not meeting the commitment of the levy, which told us we would be upstaffing our stations, so now it's sometimes we're not doing it.
Can I answer that? Because I think that's a great question. The promise that we promised the taxpayers was hiring 62 firefighters, opening up Station 12 and Station 13, instituting quick response units, and increasing wildland capable apparatus, and our response reliability as far as wildland. We've gone from 7 pieces of wildland apparatus to 19. We've opened station 12 and we've opened station 13, and currently we're at 59 or 61. 61 of the 62 firefighters that we promised the taxpayers that we would meet. So we're super close to meeting that. We have 2 or 18 more months before that obligation is to be met. So we need to hire one more person. We've met the obligation that we promised the taxpayers.
Yeah, I know it's a semantic thing, like sometimes they're working and sometimes they won't be working, so sometimes you get them for full service and sometimes you don't. I'll be perfectly honest, it comes off a little bit odd as a person, you know, from the outside. I understand maybe it's not gonna have a significant, but like, if you think it needs a 4-man crew and you staff the 4-man crew, but on certain days it's only a 3-man crew, that service level can't be the same on that day. So it's not a consistent, like in my mind, and so if that was the purpose of the levy, why aren't we meeting that service
And
need?
I'd say that we are, but it's a matter of, I mean, if you take it to an extreme, how many people do you cover before you? Because to backfill an overtime position, I have to have somebody there. So how many somebodies there do I have when on this day, everybody shows up? So I don't need any of the somebodies, but on this day, God knows how many people decide not to be there, how many somebodies do I keep in reserve? So there's a balance that we have to do, and basically, this has been one of my things since I got on the board. Overtime has been horrendous. The way we do leave that people can basically schedule vacation in the middle of a shift isn't done anywhere. And I just sort of can't believe we do, but we do. But it's sort of a reality that we face. Do we want to have to do this? No, but it's millions of dollars. And I look at it as there are stations that, yes, are upstaffed to 4, but we have lots of stations that are 3. Every station that Gresham has is 3. So is it better to have 4? Yes. Is it good to have 3? Yeah. It
I
becomes
don't-
balanced.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that at all, and that's why I said, that what I see is there's a significant conflict between the balancing of the budget and having consistent service level, like we said we were gonna do 4, but it's not every day. And I understand you have to make that sacrifice, but in my mind, at the end of the day, great, we can make that sacrifice, but if you're gonna communicate it to the community, it's still only not every day. Like, it's just,
Lindsay, and
it's a perception
But it's not
thing.
every station either. But I've had the same thing when people have asked me, why did that station get a 4th person and this station only has 3? My answer, I don't know, because those guys do. And they came to me and said, because when we did the future funding task force about the levy, I'll be honest with you. I personally probably think we staffed, well, I'll say, it, we staffed more up to 4 person than I would have. But I was willing to take that because we had people that wanted to upstaff all of them. What we did when we did the levy, when we brought together the command staff and the board and a representative from the union, was we tried to figure out something that we could all live with. And I think that's what we did. We wanted to be able to take it to the people, not with this is what they handed to us, but this is what we came up with that would work. And that's what we did.
You will have unique situations though with stations that are for currently to roll a second piece of apparatus. That potentially will not happen if that 4th does not get backfilled.
Chief, you had a call.
Yeah, I really think we're talking about inside baseball. We're talking about inside baseball with people that have internal ties to the organization. What we've talked about to the community is increasing staffing. What we've talked about to the community and our promise to the community was the station 12, station 13, the QRUs, 62 firefighters, the wildfire protection, and increasing the types of apparatus that we have. We have met all of those obligations. How we staff, like that wasn't part of the promise to you. What was part of the promise was increasing firefighters. And if we get down the road and we say, hey, it makes more sense because of the analytics that the QRUs, which are drastically reducing the amount of calls that the heavier piece of apparatus are going on. Station 1, here's a perfect example. We had 4 firefighters at station 1 and we added a QRU there. Now station 1 has gone from running 10 calls a shift down to 2. So now does it make more sense to have a 4th on that engine, or does it make more sense to put another QRU? Those are all operational decisions that are outside the purview of the public. Those are my decision as the fire chief, and that's what you've entrusted me to make based on quantifiable data and using the fiduciary responsibility that we all have for the taxpayer dollar. What I promised you was what we just walked through. And we are just shy of meeting that 2 years into the levy. So the team has done a really good job bringing those promises forward, and we're still striving to meet that promise. I have to make that promise, and that's why those are our things that Mark talked about as far as we're making where we're at, the cuts we're making, the things we're doing has all of these promises that we're still gonna make. And so I have to make those promises that I promised the taxpayer. They hold me accountable to that. So I appreciate the conversation, but again, Julie, operationally, like, I don't lean on you to be the ops chief, I lean on Dan to be the ops chief, and if there is a situation where we're not having 2 apparatus go out, then maybe there's another plan in play that will aid to where that apparatus can respond just as quickly and just as effectively. But those are all things we haven't relayed out to the organization or to the community as of yet.
So just as that's great. This is a public document and clearly states that you're gonna be not understaffing, but making this decision in this document. So even though you're not, these are all good operational decisions that you're making, the public does know that this is happening
100%.
because it's part of the budget,
Yes,
which is why I asked the question.
couldn't agree more.
Perception.
100%. 100%.
So, and I'll say, from my perspective, and we'll get to this a little bit more in the next slide as well, right? We're in a different budget reality, than when the levy passed. And for, our goal is to meet the clear commitments that we laid out. We also need to understand that over a 5-year time horizon, budgets, circumstances, whatever it is, PERS, property tax, those are evolving and changing as well. And so if you look at the next slide, I mean, just in the last 7 days, we have a slight windfall of one-time revenue, due to the decision of the Oregon City Urban Renewal Commission. But more alarming, we have the potential, loss of roughly $1.9 to $2 million in ongoing revenue from ambulance transport. As AMR moves towards a plan where they will, phase out, dispatching Clackamas Fire ambulances. So that is an ongoing revenue stream that we depend on. Again, that is not reflected in the proposed budget because it just came out and we're still working through what that looks like. I'm not planning to propose any changes to the proposed budget based on that today, since it's still so early, and it's something we'll be able to evaluate along with everything else over the next few months and into the summer and see if we need a supplemental budget to address that. But that is definitely something that's on our radar. And then the last piece, which, we're still, working towards arbitration and exchanging last best offers with the union. And so those offers and what the cost would be under our offer or their offer, those are still under negotiation and can change. So just trying to navigate all that. And we will have uncertainty going into the new fiscal year, regardless of what we adopt in this budget, just because of where we are as an organization and given some of the things that are going on.
Can you give just a short little background on the AMR thing? That seems like it came up pretty quick and
It did.
we kind of staffed for that with
Yes.
these fast attack vehicles, and that concerns me a lot.
There's 2 ambulances that are currently staffed. And so we are still trying to grasp what that means and what that looks like. We just found out about this Monday. So, and so the board found out about this today,
This afternoon.
So it is something that we're still trying to wrap our heads around. And in the dynamics of it, like how do you capture the impacts? We don't fully have our head wrapped around what that's gonna mean have full implementation of it.
And what's the reason? I mean,
Yeah.
are we all of a sudden taking too much money out of their pocket? I mean, is that the concern? Is it,
There's a lot of perception,
you know?
right? There's a lot of perception that one could come up with on the reasons for it. And there's so much perception that's out there in this world, I want to get facts. And so that's what we're gonna wait to start basing our decisions off of, Tim, and I think it's such a valid question. And all these points are valid, but it's that perception, I wanna stick with the facts and then we'll respond accordingly, once we get those facts like.
Yeah, I mean, because, you know,
Big deal.
a year ago, 2 years ago, the county was talking about maybe not even reapplying with these guys. So, you know, it concerns me all of a sudden that we realize that we make some plans, and all of a sudden.
Spot on.
Yeah, okay.
Tim, you're on point.
I won't spend a lot of time on the next few slides. It's a lot of tables and figures from the budget. We always talk about beginning fund balance. It is a measure of our fiscal health. It's also a measure of our ability to have cash flow through November when property tax receipts come in. It's been very healthy the last 2 years, mainly due to levy funds and mainly due to the large balance we currently have in our capital fund, which we will start to spend down as some of these projects finish, as apparatus get delivered. But that's the largest piece of that beginning fund balance right now. But we have had a positive budget in the last few years after years of deficits that have also contributed to a healthy beginning fund balance. We already touched on the revenue. I think, you know, the biggest change is, you know, there is a drop in interest revenue as we would expect interest rates to fall a little bit. And then, you know, again, you can see the EMS revenues there, and that's the one that is a concern here, where our ambulance transport is about 1.9 of that. And then we have some other EMS revenues related to our regular calls, so. And then expenses, obviously, wages are going up. We have assumed in our budget, you know, a 3.5% COLA from our last best offer, 2% on July 1st and 1.5% on January 1st. A large increase in benefits costs, which is related a lot of it to PERS and also to our workers' comp increase. And then, like we talked about, materials and services is largely staying flat, as we've directed departments not to have increases there. And then as the levy funds, the one-time levy funds devoted to capital have largely gone down, a much smaller transfer out of the general fund and to the capital fund. And part of that transfer out in 24-25 was also moving funds from the general fund to establish that health benefits reserve fund as well, so. Do you have a question? No? Okay. All right, I will skip the next one unless there's questions, I guess. Just provides a little more detail on where the cost increases are on personnel expenses. There is a large increase in retirement and separation payouts. We do have some folks, quite a few vacation payouts scheduled in the fiscal year for folks that are retiring. The page, slide 15, summary of positions, which appears on page 37 of your budget. Did want to highlight that, right? Obviously, under the levy, there has been continued growth in positions. We're proposing to add 14.5 FTE in the new fiscal year. That would be 2.5 support positions and then 12 firefighters from that spring academy that we were planning. Okay, and then we have operational replacement. Share this slide pretty much every year. Again, we just touched on this and the proposed reduction here for cost savings to balance the budget. And you know, I will just say that you know, I analyze, you know, our leave usage by day to make, by each day of the year to make some estimates of what savings there might be from not backfilling certain vacancies. Ultimately, it's gonna depend on the plan that operations rolls out. And this number here, 5.7 million, is the best estimate. But I will say that, Clackamas Fire has not done this before. And that'll be a number that we're watching as we roll into the summer about what savings are achieved from this plan and how they meet with expectations and keeping our budget balanced, so. That's that, but it would be a pretty significant reduction in costs.
I have
Yeah,
a question.
go ahead.
I'm not great at math, but so there's significantly more employees, which means more people are taking planned vacation and leave. There's only 1 year here that's like pre-levy, right? 21, 22. That would be theoretically fully staffed, like no vacancies, because I know we had we had vacancies as we were ramping staff, which caused some of these spikes, right?
Right.
So the only year that you really had, so we
23,
have
24 was the first.
first,
levy
yeah,
year,
so,
right, and that,
so the idea is going back to about that run rate,
mhm.
but we have how many additional, like,
Firefighters or
yeah,
61.
so you have 61 additional positions.
Well, I take back, sorry, 61 from the levy. There's also with this also includes the Gladstone contract for service, Sandy contract for service. So you're really looking north of, I mean, there's,
Right.
I don't know the exact, but it's near the 100 range.
So
Over that time.
there's more people, which means there's more people taking vacations. I guess my question is this, even with the operational changes, is this really realistic to be able to meet with all the additional staff compared to just pre years?
I think real quick, I think the other thing with that figure is we wanna make sure we have operational flexibility as well, right? Because if we have a red flag day in the middle of summer, being able to make sure, so, yeah, I mean, that number's kind of fluid a little bit, but.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say, I mean, I'll say what I said before, which, yeah, this is an estimate. I do think it's achievable. Or I wouldn't have put it there. But like I said, there's a pretty big, plus or minus on that. Because like I said, we haven't done it before, but, you know, we were expecting, and you're starting to see it in the latter half of this fiscal year. Operational replacement is falling as a cost because we have finally caught up on our levy hiring, right? Whereas in the first year and a half, we created new seats before we necessarily had all the people we needed to fill them. So operational replacement was very high. That's what in the first half of this year, which is leading to that $8 million estimate, right? But on the natural, you know, we're gonna graduate an academy in July or at the end of June, right? But the only new position will be station 12, which is just a 2-person crew. So that will fill some of our vacancies. We've also had a lot of apparatus operator overtime because we didn't have eligible apparatus operators to promote off the list. And we just promoted a bunch of apparatus operators, filling vacancies and dropping operational replacement as well. So there are other pieces to this than just the operational plan to not fill some of those seats. There are going to be decreases in it anyway going forward, if that makes sense.
The only reason I asked was because obviously this has been something that
So
has had overages, and so by underestimating and then having another overage, we have, you know, we're taking out of that surplus, so
Yeah,
just, you know, just wondering. With all the additional staff, which means even more vacancies.
is it achievable?
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's
That's a great
a
question.
fair question.
Again, I hope so, because I looked, because 24, 25, our overtime was 25% of our general operational, you know, costs. And this puts it at 17. I can tell you from the private sector, any of the businesses that I ever ran, if I had overtime numbers like that, I have a fit and fall right through it. And you probably couldn't survive. With overtime rates like that, you probably couldn't survive. So somewhere in there, the poor little taxpayers, we gotta do something to help them.
Well, that's actually a really interesting point, because I've never worked in an industry where we allowed overtime, like I don't get overtime, that's not a thing that exists. So for me, it's kind of interesting, you know, to be looking at an industry where it's required, right, to backfill a position. When I'm not at work, nobody does my job, it just doesn't get done.
Right.
Which shows how valuable my work is, right? But I guess the other question I had, and again, this is just for my information, because I'm not trying to ask about operations, but at what cost, because, you know, you pay benefits on an employee, right? 45% of the salary, usually in my side of things. I don't know, with PERS, maybe it's higher. So at what point is backfilling at some point with only overtime with an existing employee cheaper than a new employee? Like, I mean, just,
You mean it's straight time?
yeah. Like incurring in this instead of
Right.
incurring in the other, like at some point, there's gonna be a cost benefit analysis where it makes sense to incur more in overtime and reduce your total staff. And it's a horrible thing to say, but from an analytics perspective, purely, there is a cutoff
And
point.
that comes back to that, how many, what pool somebody's gonna have to fill in that spot,
Yep,
is it?
and balancing, you know, like on the services, like not overburdening your employees and having mandos and not. Also on the other side, not providing any overtime opportunities for people that want it, so like it's a you know,
It's crazy.
I don't envy the balance you have to make, but.
It's a balance.
It's a
and
balance.
It's one of the reasons why the budget versus the actuals is off every single year.
Yeah.
Um,
And I will
because we
say-
do our best to manage it, but you think you've got you've hired the right number, and then you have a bunch of folks go out on injury or unexpectedly retire, or, you know, there is a balance there of where it makes sense within the budget. Okay, slide 17, don't want to dwell on that. Okay. Slide 18 probably takes a little bit of time. So we do have a unique proposal in the budget, that I don't believe Clackamas Fire has utilized before. So PERS operates, through state law, a program called the Employer Incentive Fund, where essentially over time, the state sets aside, lottery funds, into an account, and when that account gets enough lottery funds in it, they open the Employer Incentive Fund and allow, public sector agencies with a high enough PERS liability to get matching funds from those lottery funds to prepay basically some of their PERS liability by setting up what they call a side account. So the proposal would be that we spend $1.6 million, which would be matched with $400,000 from the Employer Incentive Fund. That would set up a side account for us with PERS of $2 million. And then what PERS does is that money, that side account sits there and accrues interest and earnings at their regular PERS investment rates. And over a period of 20 years, they take a portion out each year to reduce our regular PERS rates and our PERS costs. So we currently have a side account from the PERS pension bonds that we sold 2 decades ago, roughly, that has been keeping our rates lower than they would otherwise be. And so this is another chance to start it. It would be, you know, $2 million on our PERS liability is not a huge amount. But it would be accessing those matching funds. I don't know where else we're gonna be able to put the district money and get a 25% match and a 25% return. So I think it's a good investment in those funds that will be paying a dividend relatively small over the next 20 years to keep our rates low. Lower, yes, lower, not low, but lower than they would otherwise be. The program was opened, and I believe in April for some of the agencies with the worst PERS liability. And then it opens again in July for us and other agencies. And it's on a first come, first served basis, so this all could be for naught, and that we would try to apply and not get in the program if there's a lot of demand for it. And we will be able to go to a few PERS seminars and talk to some advisors in June to make sure it's the right direction we want to go. But I couldn't move forward at all if I didn't have the funds appropriated, which is why you see it in the budget. So
What are the odds that you'll qualify for that?
I have not know. I mean, the last time they did it, this is only the second round. The last time they did it, they ran out of funds. And then they came back later and were able to get most folks, but I don't know how.
Is it dependent upon when you apply, or?
They say it's under the state law that was written by the legislator, it's first come, first served. So I'm gonna have Michael sitting on his computer first thing on July 1st, so the application ready to go. To get it in, assuming it's something that we are,
So it's not a qualification, it's.
approving to do in a budget.
Okay.
right,
wow.
I mean, certain agencies, if they're, you do have to. Your PERS liability has to be above a certain percentage to qualify, so there are certain agencies that aren't eligible, but we are not one of those.
Is the lump sum then in addition to your normal PERS liability? Cause or is it?
Right, so,
This is in addition.
right,
It just helps keep the future lump
Right.
sums.
so what we
lower,
would
less
see
lumpy.
is we would create this side account, and then when PERS sets our new rates again in 2027. They would be a little bit lower because we have this offset from this side account for us.
12:01, Michael.
I'll be ready. 12 in 2 seconds, right? Yeah.
Someplace that has fast internet.
You know, so the concern, one of the concerns which I highlight, right, is, you know, we talked about the getting fund balance and, you know, what are the other uses for this fund? Again, I think the 25% match is attractive. And, you know, for the next couple of years, not as concerned about running out of cash and having to do TANs, but that could be something we face down the road depending on the financial picture, but,
And I just, you know, it seems like a smart move to try and, that unfunded liability that sits out there is just a sort of Damocles over our head.
Yeah.
Anything we can do to dull the damn thing. If
What
it
are we
does,
gonna do? Take our fire station? There's no way PERS has anything to collect against.
no. We will talk about the district court's decision, the Detroit retirees case, that's always the. But no, I think it's just a smart move, given we don't have a whole lot of good moves to make. And it just keeps getting worse, so we're gonna keep it from getting less worse or make it get less worse.
right, and so I would point out, right, like, one of the things I would tell you guys is I'm gonna present to you a balanced budget, right? So now with this 1.6 million included, this is in a way an unbalanced budget, and that we're gonna be spending. The proposed budget has $1.6 million more in expenditures than we're receiving in current year revenue, and that's because I'm making this proposal to spend this out of our beginning fund balance, so.
Will you forego it will you know about whether or not you get the 25% before you allocate, like, have to put them into the actual
Right.
account? Okay,
Yeah, so I
if
believe
you
the
can't
process
get the
is
25,
right, you do the application, but the payment isn't due until October or something, right? So, so we'll know ahead of time, and again, if our application, if we don't get in through the application, then the 1.6 million stays where it's at.
So in other words, we have to put $1.6 million into PERS, and let them lose that money again. In exchange for $400,000. Is what
That's
carries.
another way to look at it.
Well, as I understand.
I mean, it's, yes, we have it credited to our side account, right? And then it would be withdrawn as an offset to our regular first contributions every year.
I understand our side account currently stands at $4,067,153 as of PERS currentness, which is the end of 2023, because of course we can't keep up on these things. And that our rate relief over the period of time that we've had in there is $1.3 million. So, over 20 years. So you still think that's a good deal?
I'm not sure about the 1.3 million.
That's PERS, that's our PERS side, that's how much rate relief we receive.
over the whole life of it,
The whole life of the account.
but you said the balance was,
4 million.
Current balance is 4,067,153, current as of end of 23. So I don't know what it is today, neither
Right.
today.
yeah, I do, and so we also have the challenge that our current side account is going to be exhausted by 27-28. Right? And so that's a separate fiscal challenge that we're gonna face, like the rate relief from our current side account is just over 2% annually. Right, and so that's why I'm having a hard time with the $1 million number over the life, because according to the PERS documents, it's subsidizing or reducing our rate by 2% annually. Right, absent this side account from the PERS pension bond, our PERS rates would be above 30%.
Well, I could have easily read their.
Right, and we can look at it together later, because I agree with you that PERS reports they're not timely. And they are not always clear.
Well, and the actuary report is 157 pages long.
Yes.
Trying to figure out, and that's for 1 year.
Right. And they publish them late, so happy to look at that with you, because I'm not, those numbers aren't jiving with my understanding of where we're at with the pension bond. So, okay.
So, this is euphemistically called output smoothing. With a 20-year amortization. Okay.
And then the last thing, I think, a couple other small things, but, touching on the capital plan, which as usual, is in section 10 of the budget. And there are quite a large dollar amount of projects planned, and part of that is we have projects that were funded in prior years, that are carrying over to this year, and so that is roughly, so that's roughly $4.6 million in projects from previous years. The bulk of that are 3 fire engines that we ordered, 1 from this year and 2 from the year before that. So that is just over $3 million in apparatus that we ordered and are waiting on. And you'll probably see that carry over again in 26-27 and maybe into 27-28, because there's a big lag in getting those delivered.
Because we're not supposed to get any of them.
It's 3 to 4 years
Yeah,
typically.
yeah.
And so it makes the capital expenditures for this year look very high, because we have that 4.6 million. The other large project that's carrying over, which Julie alluded to, is we're using urban renewal funds to update our training warehouse, which is where our academies take place. It doesn't currently have locker rooms, showers, women's restroom. So we're making the upgrades to that with the money that we were able to transfer from the town center urban renewal to our 130th Avenue campus. So that construction, I believe, is supposed to start in August, I believe. So those are the 2 projects that are carrying over. With our continued apparatus replacement plan, we have 2 additional engines that we are planning to order, a few staff vehicles, a lot of facilities projects, mainly replacements of our building systems that are old and close to failure. You look at the HVACs and the roofs that we're talking about replacing, and they're long past their service life. So that's an overview of the capital plan. The concern, which has been a recurring issue. Well, actually, before I move on, a couple other projects I mentioned on the capital plan. We have been talking for a number of years about our radios, the firefighters' radios. We had originally budgeted a few years ago over $2 million to replace those radios. Comms and ops went back and did a thorough analysis of, hey, how do we reduce our inventory of radios so that we don't have to spend that much money on them? What are the radios that are truly needed in this organization to function? And so we did reduce that inventory and that price a little. We also made the decision, both from a logistics standpoint, but also from a money saving standpoint, to phase that that project out over 3 years. So you'll see in the capital plan, we've got roughly, between $480,000 and $500,000 over the next 3 years in communications. And the bulk of that is to, in 3 phases, replace all of our frontline radios. I am hopeful. We tried for a grant, an AFG grant on this before and didn't get it. I think if the AFG opens again, we might try again and hopefully some of that can be grant funded. The other piece I would highlight is our turnout budget, trying to keep pace with both the pace of our hiring and also with making sure that firefighters are in safe turnouts that are not older than 12 years, and get those replaced. So those are a share of the expenses. We have been recently, I want to thank Marilyn and Chris. We do have a capital projects committee, and so they've had a few meetings with our fleet manager, our sports services officer, and our facilities manager to kind of go through these plans and hear more in depth about these projects and how we identify them. The concern as always is, as you can see in the bottom line there with the ending fund balance, that our capital replacement fund at our current base of expenditures will run out as soon as next fiscal year. And so this has been a chronic issue of how do we contribute more dollars to our capital plan? How do we identify our resources, whether it's through grants? The levy was a short-term fix, and that's one of the reasons we've, despite the cuts and decisions we had to make, did not want to reduce the transfers going from the general fund to the capital replacement fund.
Questions?
Yes. Wait.
A couple perspectives. One is, when I look at capital expenses and I look at this list, all of them, in my mind, other than facilities, are depreciating assets. I mean, they're gonna get old and they're not worth as much, unlike property, which is gonna be increasing in value. And I assume that's what you're talking about facilities. Does the district have property that is planned expansion that we are, when we need another fire station, is this gonna be a big surprise?
Love that you asked that question.
That's part one of the question. Part two of the question, this is just a little outside the box, which I love. Is right now, there are 5 SDCs, right? You got transportation, water, sewer, stormwater, and parks. Which I always thought was an interesting add-on, parks, but. Why isn't there a fire SDC? Is that a state mandated program? Who runs that? And it seems to me as if when new properties are developed, the expectation is that they will put a greater demand on the district for services. And isn't that the purpose of SDCs, is to ameliorate some of that anticipated expense on demands? And I don't know the mechanism, haven't a clue about the mechanism of how can you generate a fire SDC? Is that even possible? Has anybody ever thought about that?
If fire districts could do fire SDC, we would be doing a fire SDC. Cities, I know can, and that's legislation, right? I wish Brian was here to be able to answer that question specifically. So I'm gonna get some info, and I'm actually probably gonna have Brian Stewart reach out to you to answer that specifically.
It is an interesting question.
But I do know we've been diving into all sorts of revenue, how to increase revenue across the state. And there's very few benefits, I think, of being a city department. And a city department can do things like that. Otherwise, a special district is the way to go. But I don't, off the top of my head, believe that is that we have that capability in the way in current legislation. But I'll get that information and I'll make sure that Brian.
And maybe it's just a pipe dream, but it seems to me is maybe that's something that nobody's really talked about before, about the possibility as an extra income stream you know, and maybe with decreasing, building permits and so on, it's not gonna account to much, but I figure every little bit helps.
It's probably an interesting time to do it, because I know that's when you're watching, is there's been a lot of push in Salem, that they think how to get to affordable housing is to tell us that we can't collect SDCs.
Oh, yeah.
We're just supposed to do stuff for free.
Right, right.
Because that's the problem, is like, when you're paying $100,000 for a lot, affordable housing flew away with the little bird you saw this morning.
Oh, yeah, that's a pipe dream.
Yeah, but anyway,
Well,
it's a good, interesting question, though.
yeah, I mean, when in planning, when I was on planning, we always have input from the fire district, you know, on every project. Any project came up, they had the opportunity to talk about it. And if a fire district came in and says, you know, we can't support that. That went really a long way in planning. We just kind of said, well, you know, you guys need to rethink this, and it works. So to your point, I mean, to me, it makes sense. If you're going to develop something up in, let's say, Oregon City in Park Place, where we have a one engine and you're putting in 140 homes, we can't support that. I mean, I think it needs to be clear. I think the fire district needs to make a big statement about that. And, you know, I think it's a great idea. I never really thought about that. Yeah.
Let's circle back.
And I think,
Great
I think the fire district needs to be more aggressive in going to planning meetings and saying, nope, you know, this is not, this one, we cannot do this. It won't benefit us, especially now that you've gone to the voters and asked for levies. Because, you know, you can't keep doing that. And people are, at some point, they're gonna go, oh, we just can't afford this anymore, you know? So now's a good time to approach that.
Did you want to make a comment about my first part of the question about depreciating assets?
No, he wanted me to talk about property.
Yeah. We have a couple strategic investments, William, in the Station One area, but that's the whole entire, we've deferred capital since 2014 in this organization. And it's tough to get ahead if you deferred the base level capital, like we did. And so that was the whole purpose of what we're trying to do, and just getting hit with roadblock after roadblock after roadblock.
Yeah. Not the best
Because the bottom line is that, to answer your question, yes, we need to be, and we've been trying hard to get there, but we keep getting hit upside the head.
Okay, thank you.
Well, wasn't that the new district headquarters was part of that discussion, and with that, yeah, we held off with that when.
Thank goodness we held off on it, but yes.
Right, and we were gonna use the money from the closure of the urban renewal district towards that. Do we have any of that left? I mean,
We
obviously,
transferred
use it
that
for warehouse.
Yeah, we transferred all that money, and it was a low, it was 1.3 million.
Oh, is that all?
Yeah,
got
and we transferred that to where we can utilize and maximize it.
Yeah.
Without having any significant fiscal.
And my understanding was they wouldn't let us use that except on developing a new product, a new facility, right?
Yeah, or like a remodel, right? So there was a portion of that money that we utilized in a remodel at Station One. So it was very specific just in how the allocation for that urban renewal was. And it's the same thing. It's the same rules for what we can use it for. Like, you can't use it for paving. Has to be used for remodeling buildings,
Yeah.
Building fences, creating bathrooms, those types of things. So it was really limited. It was a narrow scope to which you can use it.
And you had to fight to just get that.
100%. Like buying, like if we would use that 1 point, we couldn't have used that 1.3 to buy property, I don't believe.
And that was the county that was pulling those strings. I'm still ticked off how long it took us to get the money after the district closed.
Yeah.
And they were just sitting on that, making interest on it. We weren't.
Yeah, it was really cool though. They were very, once we engaged and got them, they helped us in that process to get it to where we could utilize it and maximize it. So,
Okay.
but yeah, I can't speak to William. I do know that there's just sitting in those chairs listening. I remember that conversation about how long it took. But I was a lower rank at that point. I don't remember fully. I don't know the ins and outs behind it.
I was there.
You remember.
So that kind of begs the question, is there property that is sellable at this point that we don't want to keep or not? Because it doesn't appear, looking at this and looking ahead, it doesn't appear that we're gonna be building it anytime soon.
Mhm.
You know, and is that property more valuable to sell and bring money into the district, or to just keep holding on to it just in case we are able to build.
Yeah, I think you look at it as a one-time money right now versus holding a strategic investment that potentially in 10 years.
Yeah.
We might be able to get to where we can expand Station 1, for instance.
Yeah, well, you can always sell it.
Yeah. Or sell it, or the simple fact of the matter is that you have. Just to get inside baseball here, but we have those two houses right next to Station 1 currently. Those have been purchased. So now, instead of having, I'm just gonna, don't quote me on these, the acre, I might be wrong. But instead of having 1 acre, which is what Station 1 is, now we have 2 acres. Now, if when Station 1, we're looking at it, we're like, hey, based on quantifiable data, it doesn't make sense to have Station 1 where it's at. We should actually be buying property. And now we're a little bit more valuable having 2 acres to sell.
Yeah.
To an investor wanting to build apartments or whatever it is, than it is just that little sliver. So I think we weighed a lot of that. And if you remember in 2021, we talked about that same option. And had we sold the property then, we would have gotten maybe $200,000. Now that property is worth $500,000. So it's just, you have one-time money that's gonna go away versus being able to have it appreciated, and it's not even the property we do have, it's not gonna get us really.
In hell of a budget. Or
Well, right, yeah, well, and who knows in 5 years what the property values will be worth. I
True.
mean, you know, it may be 100,000 in 5 years.
Correct, yeah, it's one of those risks,
You
right?
never know.
Yeah, but what we do know is that based on where it's at, it does give us opportunity at Station 1 to be able to expand. Or, you know,
Yeah. No,
it's just because it's contiguous.
Yeah.
Great question.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
have a question. I put this by email to you, but when reading through this, so is the only. Trying to figure out where, like. Are we net new spending 10 million, or so 4.6 is carryover from the previous year? Like that was
Yeah, so
already?
if you look at the chart or the
What-
table on page 140, right?
Okay, thank you.
So on 140, very first line, right, is fleet, right? And so our previously ordered apparatus is the first line there, that's 3.5 million. Sorry. So the very first row there on 140 are our previously ordered apparatus. So we're waiting on 3 engines, and we've got payments left on these 2 engines that we the Vegas to be refurbed. So that's 3.6 million that was approved in a previous budget, and those purchases have already been approved by the board of directors, right? So that's the bulk of the previous spending that I'm talking about. And then the very first project in the next section are the projects that were previously approved for facilities, just over 1 million for the training warehouse remodel and some safety repairs we're making to the training tower. So that is roughly 4.6 million in previous money that's being carried over. So then you subtract that from the total there, the total of 10.7 million, and that gets you the roughly 6.2 million in new
New
projects
investment,
we're proposing
right.
for this year.
When I was reading it, it said that only 1.5 million was being transferred from the general fund to the
Right.
capital fund, so I was trying to figure out how we got to the 6.3, so is the rest coming from the levy?
The rest is coming from the balance that is in the capital replacement fund that, yes, was transferred from the levy general fund in
Okay,
the prior years. Yeah.
thank you.
And I would be remiss to not mention, within the capital replacement fund, we are still, working on paying off the balloon payment on the 2018 loan. We made the first payment on that last year. The next payment, if we choose to make it, would be on June 15th. So for those that don't remember, the 2018 loan, had a 15-year repayment plan that did not fully pay off the loan. At the end of 15 years, there was this roughly, I think it was $2 million balance that was remaining.
I think it's what it was.
That we could either then extend the loan at the current interest rates, or the bank could demand that we pay it all at once. Didn't like that hanging out there, so we decided we should pay it down and pay it off. And so we've developed this plan where if we make the payment this June plus 2 more payments, that liability would go off of our books. Knowing that we wanted to do the loan payoff a couple of years ago, or maybe a year ago, I forget when it was. I think it was a little over a year ago. We set aside the money for the loan payoff into US Treasury, so that money is currently earning over 5% in interest. Treasury rates were higher then. So we will get a share of that money back on like June 10th, so we can make the June 15th payment. Or we could decide that interest rates are still high enough that it makes sense to hold on to those funds and not make that payment. I think it'll make sense. I don't think we could find a treasury or another vehicle that's gonna have an interest rates higher than our loan interest rate for another year. But we'll look at that as we get closer to the 15th. So, and I still think it's a good move to get that liability off of our books, and we'll have eliminate that debt right on our final debt service payment in 2032. Goodness gracious. Okay, well, the next slide, just want to mention it because it does require your vote. But there's not a lot we can do about it because I really hope you will authorize us to pay the debt service on our GO bonds. Because otherwise we would not have any credit rating. So yeah, the principal and interest payments due on this bond are just under 2.5 million. It is paid for by the levy, not the levy, the GO bond rate that is charged to taxpayers. So the revenue piece is taken care of, but you do have to approve that rate. Those debt service payments will continue to 31, 32, I believe. And then we have our other funds. We already talked a little bit about the grants that are in the grants fund. So those will essentially, I think both of those finish in 25, 26. And hopefully we'll have a new grant to continue with the grant fund. The health benefits fund, again, that's largely just a transfer from the general fund. Each pay period, the district pays the estimated healthcare premiums for each employee, transfers it to the health benefits fund to cover our claims. And some employees also make a contribution that gets transferred to the fund.
Where are those grants from?
The grants, one is from Clackamas County, but they're passing through ARPA money from the federal government. And the second fund, or the second grant is an assistance to firefighters grants, which is managed by FEMA. And I'm really hoping that FEMA's gonna reimburse us.
Yeah, so you better get it now.
There's been delays,
So
What could go wrong?
like Seattle, just there's, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's scary.
And then the wildland mitigation fund, that is a self-sustaining fund. They've been very successful in getting contracts for the hand crew. And there's a crew on board now and ready to go out on assignment already this year. So all those funds should be healthy. I'm definitely continuing to monitor the health benefits fund. Again, a spike in claims, and then hopefully a good year to rebuild that balance. But that's a concern. Okay, that was everything I was going to talk about. The final slide just has our recommendations, asking your approval of the 4 items that we need to approve, which would be the permanent rate, the levy rate, the bond rate, and then the overall proposed budget. Hopefully folks had a chance to chime in and ask questions as we went along. If there are any additional questions, now would be the time. We also have public comment on the agenda, but I don't think there's anybody here to provide public.
Okay, great. General discussion, questions? Well, I do. I've noticed, well, let's see, on page 66, SCBA, professional services, you got $39,400 projected. And it says that we're now going to a professional service for testing, why are we going away from the way we were doing it? It seems like, I mean, if we're paying overtime of, the overtime was, what, $3,000 or wasn't much. Compared to that to the 30,000 or almost $30,000, it'd be, what's the reasoning behind that?
As I understand it, this is was partly an operations decision. It's also a compliance and safety decision of making sure that we have a vendor that is doing the proper tracking and repair and inventory of these SCBA's.
Yeah.
We were doing the work internally with our on-duty crews. But it was taking one time to the time to train and get those people up to speed and the expertise as we have folks transfer out of the stations. And then I'm blanking on the word I'm looking for, but the documentation and the compliance and everything, we wanted to make sure that was locked in. So operations asked to move towards a vendor to service those SCBA's.
There was significant amount of liability to the firefighters, to the organization, doing it the way we were doing it. It started as a lot smaller of a footprint of an organization until we've grown to where we're at now.
Yeah.
And so I think the general public wants our firefighters to be trained on medical calls and fire calls versus spending their whole entire day servicing SCBA's.
Sure.
So, and so
understand.
that's ultimately, I'm just giving you the reasoning that ops gave us, right? So then ops came and said, hey, this is the problem. These are the things that we see. If you look at how much it costs us in overtime to pay individuals versus just contracting it out, the liabilities, we weighed out all of those decisions and landed in favor of the recommendation out of the station captain and the battalion chief that oversaw the program, pushing it forward up that this was gonna be the best thing for our people and for the organization and ultimately the taxpayers.
Yeah. And
And you'll see the very same thing on the next page with our compressor program.
Yeah, I saw
where
that.
we had an individual employee who had all the training and certifications. Apparently enjoyed doing the compressor maintenance and all of that for overtime. That person retired, wasn't necessarily anybody to pick up the mantle, and there are service providers that will do it. So that's the direction it went.
Yeah, you mentioned on that one, that was my question, that's what really intrigued me, because your question, what you said, it's going to be offset by reduced overtime, and the other one was not, and it's kind of like, well, they just don't want to do it anymore. Well,
Yeah.
you know, it's more, I assumed it was more.
Yeah, there's a
more-
lot deeper than that.
Yeah,
Lot deeper.
and it's a larger organization, as you said, so I mean, it makes sense to do it the right way and
Yeah.
take the liability off the firefighters. Just curious, and I was wondering why it wasn't noted there,
Great question.
overtime.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
I just like that you're working on the capital. And I look at the bonds, the 15-17 bonds, where we borrowed 29 million, we've paid 19.1, and we still owe 17. By the time we pay off the 17, that's gonna be another 25 or 28. That's just a lot of money that, is going to interest. I mean, it's one of the best things that you know what I do at Sunrise. I harp on that budget constantly. We've done $50 million worth of capital and haven't borrowed any money. So,
I wish we were in a position where we could do more. We're just not.
we're trying to catch up.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we're doing it. We're trying.
Because I think it's in the best interest of the taxpayers, it's in the best interest of our firefighters, it's in the best interest of the organization. We're making strategic investment and we have software now that has quantifiable data that shows analytics, that shows us exactly where we should be placing the next fire station based on the next anticipated 15 to 20 years, and being able to buy that land now versus 20 years from now is something we would really like to do. And we can't get there yet, so we will.
I have a couple other questions for you. It's kind of in the same vein. I've seen throughout the budget where there are, for instance, and I'm looking at page 65 in training. We go from, $4,000 in conferences and schools to $10,000. I mean, it's a huge jump. And the year before wasn't even $2,000.
Yeah.
We're seeing these huge jumps, not only in that, but I also noticed in travel.
Yeah.
That travel jumped considerably.
100%.
Yeah, and is it due to the cost of travel? Is it due to the cost of the training? Because that's a huge jump, even in this
Yeah.
market.
I guess all of the above. The biggest thing for us as an organization, what's made Clackamas Fire is the fact that we get outside of ourselves. And we see not only how Clackamas Fire does it, but how FDNY does it, how Los Angeles does it, how all these places do it, and then we bring that back here. So we make sure that we're cutting edge with the level of service that we provide our taxpayers. Flights, hotels, everything costs more than it did 5 years ago. Conferences used to be $150 per conference. Now they're $500 a conference, just depending on the conference you go to. FDIC is near 1,000, right? So it just really depends on which conference people are going to, but we want to maintain getting our people outside of being just trained locally and sending people to get outside training to be able to bring in techniques to kind of see if it's not to kind of, it's to prove status quo. Is our operation and how we're delivering services the best that it can be, or is there a better way of doing it? And that's something that is super important to me as a fire chief. It's important to our communities and it's important to the firefighters. So.
Do you see a huge benefit? I mean,
Yeah.
do you see a huge benefit from, say you year to year, where if we learn something that valuable every single year?
I do, and I'll give you just a small example. And this is, again, I keep using this term inside baseball, but with how we extinguish fires, how we search inside the structure for people that are trapped, and how we ventilate structures. All of that started from outside injects. And our people, as brilliant and amazing as they are able to grab those outside influences and grab them and then create to where they are now. We have an individual that teaches across the nation currently who started the search mindset that is spreading across the whole entire United States. That's at Clackamas Fire. When I was coming up through the ranks, I taught for West Coast offense. We taught across the nation, which is vertical ventilation. So all of that came from outside injects that we then brought inside and you know, made ourselves better, and in turn are actually industry leaders with how we deliver some of our services. So I think that to answer your question, yes, I think there's lives that have been saved that we can point to because of it.
Yeah.
And when I started here, just a small little example, when I started here, it was about 30 to 35 minutes before you would hear on the radio, we have knockdown of the fire. Now, if it's not 4 to 6 minutes and we don't have knockdown, we start going, what's going on? And it's all because of how we have grabbed influences from the outside, shaped it to the Clackamas Fire way, and delivered that pristine, high level service that the customer, that our taxpayers expect from us. So, you know, to say that we go and send somebody this year, Tim, to a class, and then the next year we're gonna see that improvement isn't necessarily a true statement, but over time, you do.
But it's an investment, and
100%.
and if it's paying itself off,
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea.
And the reality is that it's not funded to where we want to fund it. We would like to increase that funding more than we can fund it right now. Because I would love to send more people outside, bring it back. It's just how we make sure when you call 911, you're getting the best of the best.
Okay.
Not just people, but talent,
Right.
but like how we deliver the service.
Technology and everything. I have one more question and I'll
Your great questions.
let somebody else talk. I've noticed throughout, and I'm just professional services overall. It looks like we've got a lot, it looks like a lot of professional services have been integrated into the budget, more than we've seen in the past. Is that because we're getting too big to do it ourselves and we need or professional organizations to come in, or is it? You tell me. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of money being invested now in outside sources.
Yeah.
And I could go through, I marked them in here, so I could tell you the pages I was looking at. But I just see it through different areas. and
What-
I'm just curious about it.
Like, what kind, where are we talking? specifically?
Like IT.
Well, yeah,
perfect.
so IT,
Love Love that.
that was a strategic decision.
Can I, go ahead, you do, okay. Forever, we've been an in-house information technology. I mean, we loved our people, they did great stuff, but as we were looking at where we were and where we needed to be. We started looking at how much it would cost to bring on the personnel to get the information technology where we needed it to be. And the projections were right around 1.5 million. We started to look at, okay, what's Tualatin Valley do? What's it look like if we regionalize? It's about the same cost, so then we started looking out above our little bubble, much like getting outside of ourselves. And we started looking at private companies and found that at 25% of the cost, we were getting better level of service outsourcing it. To where one of the biggest things internally that I got as a fire chief was frustrations with our information technology. I even think our board directors got hit with our frustration with information technology, and now I don't hear that at all. So we've increased the level of service as far as IT, but we outsourced it. But that's why you saw an increase in professional services. But at the same time, you saw a decrease in
Yeah.
professional
And
services.
you feel like you have better control or?
Yeah.
or-
Yeah, yep. We have one of the people on site. And so far, it's been a game changer and a step up for how we deliver services and getting to the next generation of technology where we should be.
Yeah,
Well, you can see the savings at the bottom of the chart on page 110, right? In 2023, our IT budget was 1.8, our IT actual expenses were 1.8 million. This year, we're only have to budget 1.1 million for it, right? The chief said, we feel like we're getting better service for that cost.
okay. Great, thank you.
And that was at the level it was, not where it was needing to get to,
Right.
be able to offer the same level of service we're getting now.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chair. I have
Yes,
just a
sir.
couple.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna start off with the smallest little nit I can find. And that is on page 116, under human capital. There was a tuition reimbursement, and it was even pointed out that it was paused due to budget constraints. So now that we have the money coming in from Oregon City's urban renewal district, can we put that $12,000 back in the budget? I think people ought to be reimbursed for their tuition.
Anybody utilizing it?
Well, I mean, you can see that there was some utilization, and the reason it wasn't carried forward or continued was, again, we gave departments the direction to hold their budgets at the same level as the prior year. And HR, believe that there were higher priorities, right? And what we found with this particular piece of tuition reimbursement, if you look in the training budget, we're providing tuition reimbursement for folks that go out and do courses that are required for the job, right? Or we're sending folks to conferences to do things that are required for the job. The way this tuition reimbursement program worked is we were paying people for going to get a degree or a class that may not relate to their current job. It was if you go and get a degree or try to get a master's in whatever, right, we were gonna provide some reimbursement for that, even though it may not be helping you fulfill your current role and mission here. Which is great from a personal growth standpoint, but we didn't think it was in the taxpayers' interest for us as a public agency to be paying those funds, and that's why it was reduced.
Well, I agree with the fact that if it's not directly related to their professional skills for this organization, that we shouldn't be paying for it. But are we implying that all that other money was for non-fire related skills? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, the tuition reimbursement here was not necessarily tied to fire related skills, or it was an admin side to their position, and that's why
I'm
it's
moving
got, we
on.
do have, I'll just to finish, like, we do have professional development funds, we have training funds. That's not what this program was that was reduced.
Got it. I want to put chief in the hot seat for just a second.
Sweet,
Yeah, I know, you love it.
I love it.
On page 54, the chief's office. So there's a new CIO,
Yes,
and it looks like the program specialist and the PIO have been reassigned to the CIO. I'm assuming the CIO is gonna be doing something besides just supervising two people.
yeah, so in pre-2021. We had 3 people within the public information realm.
Yeah.
We had a government affairs battalion chief, is what the terminology was. We had a PIO TUI, and we had a program specialist. When we hit the budget cuts, we eliminated that position. The person left the organization, Like we didn't eliminate, the person left the organization, we didn't backfill the position. Now we're back at backfilling the position as we've grown 100+ firefighters since that time frame. And so we're trying to, one of the directions from the board to me, as you scaled up the operations of the fire district, what are you doing as far as scaling up the administration and the support staff of the
Okay.
organization? So we've started to try to get back some of those positions that we didn't replace. This position is the overall strategic oversight of the communications and marketing within the fire district. We are a levy department now. So our mindset and where we've been as far as selling Clackamas Fire and what we do and educating the community has grown year over year. And it's not where it needs to be. And so we're gonna get it there. The relationships intergovernment wise at a regional and a local level, this individual is gonna help get us to where we need to be. And so that's really an area where the PIO role is more tactical.
Yeah.
It's if the PIO is the one that responds to the scenes, and with the specialists are what you see on our social media. The CIO is setting that course, setting the internal external communications, working on the overall marketing of the organization and plugging us in politically at a
That's
local.
fine. That's fine. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
And it was great to see you all at the teddy bear parade too.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Last questions that I had on page 31, something that, about the compression loss. Up in the top paragraph, the last half of the previous paragraph, it said that resulting in approximately $340,000 in compression losses. And yet, when I look on this table, the estimated compression loss is 47,000. That's a big difference from 347.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the 340,000 is referring to the compression loss we have on the optional levy, the 52-cent levy, which is on the table on the next page. So we've got two property tax levies, two tables, right? So the largest
There it
compression
is.
losses is from the 52-cent levy, because that's where they take the compression first.
So that,
Property tax compression.
so that added the two together. Got it. Okay, appreciate it. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
I think Shelby was saying Aaron had a question on Zoom here.
Aaron has a question.
You're muted.
Hi, here I am. It's Aaron. You guys hear me?
Yep.
All right. Hey, page 36 is kind of the focal point of my question for you. It talks about the 14.5 new full-time employees and fleet technician, inspector, part-time logistics driver, and the additional firefighters. Now, do we have to wait for the new budget cycle to hire all those people, or are those positions that you've already posted for and that are in the works now, or how does that all work?
12 of those are, right?
Right, so 12 of those positions are firefighter positions. That's the plan for the spring academy. So yeah, those we wouldn't bring on until the spring. And those we may bring on more than 12, like 12 would be the net.
Gotcha.
We may bring on 16, knowing that we're gonna have 4 who are retiring or whatnot, right? And then the other ones, we already have advertised for the fleet technician, because the busiest time for our fleet work group is during the summer. So we wanted to get that person hired and ready to go into the summer months. So that position is in the works. The other two, yeah, we'll wait until the new fiscal year. But yeah, I mean, we have the flexibility, assuming we can afford it, to add positions as we need to. It's usually just waiting to have the budget plan and identify where the needs are in the organization before we move forward on any new hires.
Okay, cool. That answers that one. And then one kind of an additional then for Station 12 for Logan. Is the apparatus that those two firefighters are going to use, is that already in place? Is it the old engine that's there, or are they going to get a new one of the Type 3s like you've got out in Clark's, or how's that going to work? Are they like a rescue pumper kind of a thing, a 2-man crew? How's that going to deploy?
Yep, love the question. So based on the analytics and Dark Horse, what we were looking at is historical call volume, and based on where it's strategically located, you're going to see a water tender staffed at that station, as well as a brand new type 6 wildland brush truck. And so, with 2 personnel, they'll be able to swing between a type 6 brush truck and the water tender, depending on the type of call that it would be. There'll be a paramedic on there, for ALS type medical calls. And then they'll be able to apply water until resources get there, should there be a structure fire or a wildfire or whatever it is, to try to lessen the impact from what currently exists.
Cool. Okay, that's all I had for you. Very curious about that one. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. So yeah, so brand new type 6, and then I believe it's an existing water tender, but I'm not, don't quote me on that one. I'm not sure if it's one that we, yeah. So they'll be moved there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Question. So I know that we're keeping budgets fairly flat for materials, but for like fixing vehicles and trucks and things like that, everything I've read says all material costs due to tariffs are significantly increasing. So do we think there's any risk profile associated with that, with the large amount of uncertainty for material costs in that particular
Good
department?
question.
Hell, yes.
Yes, there is definitely a risk.
Yep.
Inflation rate last month was 2.1.
That will,
Tariffs we get it haven't happened yet, so
Yeah.
I'll panic when it happens.
we haven't seen the price increases, at this time, and obviously when I directed departments, you're getting 0%, they didn't have room to budget for it. And if it materializes, we will definitely have to adjust and see how it fits within budgets, and if we need to make mid-year corrections. So that's another piece I can add to my uncertainty list.
Thank you.
So thank you.
That's
I will not do it
that's
well.
another-
Well, again tonight.
On the benefits, the cafe plan costs versus the
What page you want to leave?
59 and the health trust, so there's like
Yeah.
all these different lines.
Yeah.
Can you make some sense of
Yeah,
what's?
so there's a lot of history going on there, yeah. So we have a lot of different health plans, so there's really no difference between cafe plan claims costs and cafe plan benefits, that we're basically phasing out cafe plan benefits, but that's essentially, those 2 lines are where we put the expense for medical and dental premiums or costs that the district pays. So this is general operations, is all of our line firefighters. This is our biggest budget item on page 59, right? So throughout the course of the year, we're gonna be, the district is gonna be contributing just over 5.8 million to their medical and dental plans. So that 5.8 million will be transferred from the general fund into our health benefits fund to pay the claims expenses as they come in.
So that would have been a number that would have been somewhere else in last year's budget.
Yeah, we last year, all of the cafe plan cane costs, all of the health expenses were centralized into our administration budget. Now speaking of inside baseball, right, we were able to change how we do open enrollment. So we're doing a much better job of actually tracking our claims expenses and who's on what's health plan, and that's helped us to do budgeting. So now we can actually budget the premium costs in the department that the employees actually work in, rather than centralize it all in the admin or code, if that makes sense. So that's why there's no prior year number there. I believe it would all be in admin and 10-1400, right?
Cause it's like if you added up all these previous numbers, even in the different GL codes, it's like, that's still not $5.8 million.
Right. Yeah, so it would, if you added up all the 6,689 cafe planes costs across all the orgs, it's about 6.8 million, right? And last year in 10-1400 was about 6.8 million, centralized, right? And then we have some benefit programs, right? So we have the post-employment health plan, which every employee receives a contribution from the district to the nationwide post-employment health plan every pay period. So that contribution goes to each employee. We, up until January had a health trust that the district made contributions to on behalf of every employee. Through a tentative agreement and an MOU through bargaining. It was decided that the district would no longer make contributions to the health trust. And would instead start making contributions to the medical expense reimbursement plan, which is the next line there, the MERP. So as of January 1st, for our firefighter group and our BC group, the district is now making contributions to this MERP plan on their behalf each pay period. So that's the changes. There is no funds going to the health trust in the new fiscal year. Most of it is going to the MERP. Our non-represented employees, our admin employees are not allowed to participate in the MERP plan because it's only for union members. And so to keep them whole with the health trust going away, we've increased the contribution to the PEP for our non-represented employees. So total compensation is remaining roughly the same. It's just now it's going to the MERP for the PEP instead of the health trust.
There's mine.
If there's a test on all these acronyms, I just wanna fail right now.
Be nice to have them in the glossary.
Good point.
Any other questions? I just had a comment, and it's. I know we have it in here as summary of positions, but I think I brought this up last year. It'd be nice to have how many in each area, how many FTEs, you know, because I'm going back and forth between.
Oh, like, okay, yeah, understood.
Just so we could, just so you can get a sense of it, because, you know, you look at some of these dollar amounts and you go, I go back, how many people we're talking about?
So you're saying like in the general operations, right, knowing that that's the firefighters, you want how many firefighters in that line of.
Yeah,
where
it'd be
it
just
is
nice to see how many we
I got
have.
it.
And in the chiefs, I mean, I could figure it out, because I went and looked, but it's nice to know there's 6 people for whatever. It would just be, I think for somebody in the public looking at it, I think
Makes it
it's
cleaner.
beneficial to see it, and it's clean.
Tim, I think that's on page 37.
Yes, it's just, I was saying, put it on.
You put it
each one
in
of
each section as well.
Because I did that, and I was just going back and forth with this, and
Yeah, it makes it easier for the layperson.
Yeah.
Dive into the budget.
Yeah, in my ideal world, I would like to revamp the whole budget document, but someday when there's infinite time. I would also like to explore, and I'm curious, I haven't brought this to the board or the committee before, how folks will feel about a biannual budget as opposed to an annual budget. We've seen a lot of public agencies move towards a 2-year budget. From my perspective, I've been against it in the past because I think things can be pretty volatile and change quickly, and if you're locked into a 2-year budget, that may not be good. But on the other hand, going through this process, which we start, back in February, all the way through June every year, is very resource intensive. And, so if I think about, well, when am I actually gonna have time? When is Michael gonna have time to actually revamp the budget and create a whole new document that meets our modern needs or work on other things? When, 5 to 6 months a year, we're working on the budget process. Not that we're not doing other things at that time as well. So anyway, we'll just throwing that out there that,
I'd support the idea. I've seen the benefits in Oregon City when they went to the biennial budget. And it saves staff so much time. So
So
much
you know when
time
they did it?
to go through this. When did they do
Yeah,
it?
it was a couple years back, right?
Oh,
Like 6
no,
years,
it's longer than that.
longer than that, okay.
That was back when, what's his name was still.
Okay.
So it's what,
It's
6
not- and in the
years?
city, it's one thing, but I think in this environment, I think it's so volatile. I mean, you brought your whole first hour was talking about how volatile it is.
Yeah.
So, committing to a 2-year, I think we'd be having to be supplemental budgets every year anyway, right? Just to make sure we got it corrected. I don't know, I like the idea too of the 2-year budget, but I just think at this point, I think we were more stable. I think it's a great idea, but I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah, I think certain organizations it might work. I mean, some of the other water departments do, because that's pretty. I can tell you how much water people are gonna use in August. You don't know how many people are gonna call 911 in August, so. Yeah, it's volatile. You wanna go to 2-year?
No.
That's the year. We're all done. Marilyn said no.
all right, well, you're all invited back next year.
I do have
Beth?
one other question, just because I actually haven't been following it, but what is the dollar amount impact variability between the two contract with the union
Well,
that might end up in a supplemental
Last best.
or not?
yeah, so for 2025-26 at this point, it is not a very large difference. The union submitted a revised last best offer last night. And so we, in 25-26, as it currently stands, we're only 0.5% apart. So if that stays the case through arbitration and that those are, and their LBO was awarded, it'd only be a 0.5% increase in wages in this year, right? The complication for us would be in the out years where they still have much larger increases than we do. But the impact of this fiscal year under the current LBOs that are out there is not as great as it was prior to yesterday. Prior to yesterday, we were at 3.5% and they were at 5%. And now we're at 3.5% and they're at 4%.
Wasn't that like the difference between a $1.3 million hole and a 3.4 million or 3.7?
Yeah. So, yeah, so anyway, so the things are still fluid there, still some uncertainty, but the impact on our budget for this current year is not as great. Depending on the outcome of arbitration as it was.
Since you threw out the 2-year budget issue, I want to throw out one other thing, and I apologize if this catches anybody off guard, but I think this is such an outstanding budget, it really needs to have a certificate. I see so many other budgets, and they all have the front thing, they've won this award, and he's on the committee, and it's not expensive. He just doesn't want to jump through the hoops, and I think it's a great PR thing, if nothing else.
It's my fault.
Well, shame on you.
Well, let me tell you why it's my fault. We were
Okay.
getting certificate after certificate after certificate, and then I became fire chief. And we were in a $1.8 to $3.4 million
Yeah,
deficit immediately. And so, to me, what's a certificate do if you're not holding a level of fiduciary accountability?
and now that we
now.
are, and
But-
now that we are,
Well, now we are, I think the certificate would be awarding to award these gentlemen and their team for certificates, but I don't know, that's been my,
I hear you.
that was a little bit of my, what's a certificate do for us if we're not maintaining the fiduciary responsibility? Now we are, and we're not doing certificates. It's the baseball superstition in me, maybe.
You and your baseball.
Never screwing the streak.
Yeah, don't mess with the
I think
street.
that's fair, very fair.
So, yeah, and I appreciate that, William, and I know we talked about it, and, you know, like the chief just said, I mean, that's an award that's based on presentation and how your budget looks, not on whether the numbers are accurate or it's truly balanced, right? And I do think we would have to do some work to properly qualify for the award. But, you know, it's not a priority for me, I'll be honest.
We certainly appreciate Mark and Michael.
Amazing.
Every time we sit up here, we make multi-million dollar decisions.
Yeah,
They go and, they came to us with a proposal about instead of buying fire engines at $1.1 million, could we send back 2 of our lower mileage units and have them be refurbished, upgraded to kind of what we, certain features that we get now for $950,000? We got 2 of them. I trust the numbers. I asked, and I kind of have a background in mechanical stuff, so I asked to see what's the scope of work we're having done. They covered it. I couldn't see anything on there that I would have asked that they didn't do. The nice thing is we make these numbers, when we make these decisions, we can trust Mark's numbers. And that is a big thing, because we sit up here as 5 elected people that the voters in their infinite wisdom said, go up there and make those decisions. And it's tough to do when you're looking at numbers. How Maryland did it for all the years, I don't know. I don't know. I sat in the audience as a citizen sometimes and went, boy, if you don't have the answer to that question, what exactly did you bring with you tonight?
yeah.
Now we have Mark and Michael, and if they tell me that number is that number, I believe them. And it's very reassuring. So
Nice to have M&Ms.
I'll make you, I got crayons, I'll make you a certificate.
Both of them are amazing. and we're lucky to have them.
Oh, I hardly agree. Mr. Chair, are you ready for a motion?
I am, do we have public comment? No, is that what I heard? All right, then I am.
I'd like to propose a motion. Do we want this in one full group, or do we want
They need to be.
four individually? All right, so first of all, I would move that this committee approves the Clackamas Fire District's permanent tax rate of 2.4012 per $1,000 assessed value for fiscal years 25-26.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second, motion a second. We're gonna call for the roll or, okay,
Chris,
Yes.
Jim,
He's trying to get on.
Yes.
Oh.
Thomas, Thomas,
Get a screenshot.
Marilyn.
Yes.
William,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Tim,
yes,
Julie,
Yes.
Lindsay.
Yes.
And second, and motion passed. That's what you're,
Motion
that's your
has
line,
passed.
yeah, okay. So secondly, I'd like to make a motion to approve Clackamas Fire District's voter approved local option tax levy rate at $0.52 per $1,000 of assessed valuation for fiscal years 25-26.
okay, we have motion, we have second,
I second that.
motion and a second,
Ready for the roll?
call the roll.
Chris,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Marilyn.
Yes.
William,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes,
Julie,
Yes.
Lindsay.
Yes.
all right, motion passed.
Motion passed. I would like to make another motion to approve Clackamas Fire District's levy for bonded debt at $2,479,500 for fiscal year 25-26.
All right, we have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second, please call roll.
Chris,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Marilyn.
Yes.
William,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes,
Julie,
Yes.
Lindsay.
Yes.
that has passed as well.
I'd like to make a final motion to approve the fiscal year 25-26 proposed budget for Clackamas Fire District.
Okay, we have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Yeah, we have a second.
Aaron second.
Aaron.
Aaron seconds you.
Throw me
All
on.
right. Call for roll, please.
Chris,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Marilyn.
I may abstain on that. I did not have enough time to talk to Mark about this first EIF program, and I wanna, feather it out with them before I approve it.
William,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes,
Julie,
Yes.
Lindsay.
Yes.
motion passes with, yes, abstaining. Okay. All right, any further business? All right, well, hearing no further business, we are adjourned for this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks, Aaron.
Hey, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jim.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think Jim could keep the jargon.